it's such an easy way to see that there's nothing better than practicing Dharma. We're so fortunate to have the Dharma, unbelievably fortunate. So from this space and thinking about the Dharma is what helps us fully wake up. And so some of the diversity work I'm doing right now with one very impoverished African-American community near me, the expression from their tradition, get woke. We need to get woke. We need to wake up overall, whether it's about race relations or gender equality, all of our things. But I find one of the best ways to do it is to dismantle my delusions internally, my own mechanisms, me taking care of my mind with the broader motivation that I'm doing this to reach that fully enlightened state. Why? For the purpose of benefiting all living beings. That's the whole drive, is for the purpose of benefiting all living beings, for the purpose of helping others, helping all beings. We're also included, it's not just others, we're included in that equation. So with that in mind, if that works for you, consider your motivation right now, and let's just close our eyes and find a comfortable posture to bring ourselves here into this space. Reflecting again on what you're hoping to find from this course on the spiritual teacher. How it can best support your practice. And through getting clarity on, I've already found a teacher, how can I better serve them and devote to them that will accelerate my path to enlightenment? Maybe I need to find a teacher. I'm trying to figure out what lends to that. Again, so I can more quickly get enlightened. But the real purpose is to benefit all living beings, all sentient beings. So if you'd like to include that in your motivation, feel free, and take a moment right now to set that positive motivation. And just reflecting briefly, scanning a bit of what you remember, and I will remind you of some of these. The disadvantages, if we're not finding a spiritual teacher, not devoting to one, the disadvantages, just reflect for a moment, one of our meditations. There's 8 of each of these, 8 disadvantages, 8 advantages. If you disrespect your teacher, it's like disrespecting all the Buddhas, because they are kind of a representative of all that enlightened energy, especially highly realized teachers. So think about that. If you want to disrespect all the Buddhas, what does that do for your practice, for your life? Think about not achieving enlightenment, really delaying enlightenment and creating obstacles on your spiritual path. You won't develop fresh qualities of the spiritual path, and the good qualities you do have will tend to degenerate. Disadvantages will follow you in this life, illness, things like that, possibly. And just think about future lives, the difficulty you'll have in meeting a teacher, in meeting a qualified spiritual teacher. And you could also think, if you're having obstacles now to finding the right teacher, maybe in past lives, you didn't devote well. Could be a karmic result of that. Just reflect for a moment a few of those disadvantages. And let's reflect on a few of the advantages. You become closer to Buddhahood. You devote properly, you become closer to Buddhahood, because that teacher is very interested in getting you completely, ultimately free. That's their job. You follow their advice, of course you get closer to Buddhahood. Wouldn't that be nice? You can please all the Buddhas by properly devoting. You'll never lack a spiritual teacher in future rebirths. Chances are you won't be reborn in lower realms. So try if you can to reflect on this while I'm reading the different levels. You won't have a lot of obstacles with inner and outer hindrances. Think about achieving your short and long-term aims. And completing the accumulation of merit and wisdom. That sounds pretty good. So maybe at the end of this reflection, just in your heart, make a dedication right now to either enhancing your relationship with a qualified guru, a qualified teacher, spiritual teacher. So maybe making the way you serve them, the way you act with them, just in your mind even, better, fine-tuned, improved. Or the urgency that I want to find this person and devote properly. Because I really want to benefit all living beings. Just make that determination. So please relax. Slowly open your eyes. We're going to talk today. We have 2 more sessions. The devoting with thought. What does that mean, devoting with thought? Because we say we devote with thought, we devote with action. And devoting yourself through thought is training yourself to have faith in your guru. Training yourself to have faith. Okay, so let's look at what that's about. The faith. The Buddha had said, faith is the mother of all good qualities. Okay. As children are born with the mother, good qualities are born with faith. Faith causes all good qualities to increase and new ones to develop. So this is a tricky one for Westerners about faith. We don't have built-in faith the way my Asian sisters and brothers do. Okay? So think about faith. One of the things I did, just telling personal story with my relationship with Lama Zopa Rinpoche, okay? I mentioned this before, I think. So when I met Rinpoche at Kopan Monastery in the spring of 1987, I wasn't looking for Buddhism. I was very satisfied with my religion that I was born into. I wasn't looking for a teacher. I didn't even know what that meant. I didn't know what guru meant. If anything, I was a little afraid of the word because I mentioned before I thought of cults. Okay, and there was a teaching. Rinpoche came at the end of our course, our 10-day course, he taught for 4 hours, right through lunch. And I understood, I think, about 2 sentences. So I was really kind of all week I'd been hearing about he's coming, like God is coming. That was the way it was kind of presented to me. This is the main teacher, Kopan. This is the main, he's like a Buddha, some of the disciples said. I didn't have any context to that. I was like, I was on my trip, was traveling in Asia. So I thought, well, this is kind of cool. This is a great story to tell my friends, right? That's how I approached it. It's standard Western mentality, not faith and whatever. And then he taught. And then when he taught through lunch, I was really hungry. I didn't understand, it's lunchtime. So I generated, kind of this irritation, then only understanding about 2 sentences for the 4 hours that he's taught. And I looked around at his disciples and they're all very, hanging on his every word. I was really like, what's this about? It had a little cultish vibe, but there was something from the heart there that impressed me, something different. Okay. But also 70 of us were new students like me in the course, not disciples. And I was kind of watching some people made prostrations. I didn't have that context, and some people didn't. Some people were enamored. There was a man in front of me from Berkeley, California, that was part of one of my discussion groups. He showed up at Kopan just like me. He was on a spiritual journey though, in Asia. And he was in my discussion group, and I said to him, what do you do? Like, how is that different than my bopping around Asia at that time, And so he went to all the holy spots. He went to Rishikesh and Pune and the Hindu ashrams and the Buddhist monasteries. And he was really actively looking to connect with somebody who taught, and they could be monk or not, or Swami or whomever, male, female. And he said, I'm looking for my teacher. And then all week he heard about Rinpoche, talk about karma. And he kept saying to me, I think this is the guy for me. I think this is it. And I was really happy for him. And I did ask him, like, what do you do? And then he mentioned he went to this spot and this spot. And he told me all these teachers, and I knew nothing of that. But he, and then Rinpoche turned up, and I was really excited for this guy, that he was going to find his teachers, what he wanted to do. And he had been through many people he'd sat with. And then Rinpoche came and taught, again, the 4 hours, and the guy left the next day. That wasn't it for him. Like, so interesting. And I show up, I'm not looking for anything. And so I saw that guy again in Berkeley after I got back from the trip. We had dinner at his house one night, and he was still looking for his guru. It was really interesting, like, doing his thing, working. And so I had no intention. And this is where karma, the hook, the guru knows who you are, the qualified teachers, they know who you are, but we're dense and obscured. Okay. So you show up with all your different ego situations. And my trip, I was on a trip for 6 months. This was about 2 months into my trip, 2 or 3, halfway, basically on my trip, what I was doing. So showing up, and then somehow the first teaching, I'm not getting much, but I was drawn to it somehow. Of all these different things I tried in my life, not feeling coerced, I just felt this heart opening, somehow, like intrigued, I think is the main, intrigued. And then Rinpoche taught again another day and I got a little bit more out of it. And what I would do is, because I couldn't really understand him very well, he taught in English, I would just kind of sit and close my eyes during the teaching, and little things would pop through. Little things got through. Just the kind of thing that, and obviously he knew who I was, that I was a disciple. I knew nothing. Okay. So finally you could ask, I think, did I mention this story to people before? You could ask for an appointment. You could get appointments with the different lamas at Kopan at the time. Have people heard this story before? I don't know. Anyway, if I'm repeating, you can just say. Most people are shaking their heads, so I'll continue. So what happens is this is an intricate process. It'll be different for each of you. And those of you that already have a teacher, it's different. You have your own story. But what happens is they did tell us you can, if you'd like and you have some more serious questions, you can ask in the classes, the group sessions with 70 to 100 people there, or you can request a private appointment, separate appointments. But so everybody, 70 people in my class, all wanted individual appointments with Lama Zopa Rinpoche because he was the highest of the high there at the time. But there were other great lamas there. Two of my other great teachers were there, who was the abbot of Kopan, Geshe Lama Lundrup was his name. He wasn't a Geshe at the time, but Lama Lundrup. He's like the spiritual father of all of us that have connected at Kopan. And Geshe Lama Konchog, who had wandered in from Nepal, somehow knew Rinpoche and Geshe Lama Lundrup and came into Kopan after he was up in the mountains in Nepal. The people had tried to poison him there somehow, whatever, I don't know. And he came to Kopan. And so those were the three triple gem when I got to Kopan, were those three. And they were great lamas, really great teachers. And over the years, my relationships deepened with them. And two have since passed away and been reincarnated. And I've met the reincarnation. Actually, sorry, I've met the reincarnation and know quite well the one of Geshe Lama Konchog, but they've reincarnated. So they said it's going to be hard to get an appointment with Lama Zopa Rinpoche because everybody wants that. But you could have a meeting with Geshe Lama Konchog through translation because he did not speak English, and Geshe Lama Lundrup. Or you could go in a group to Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So 6 of you together maybe. And you could just have a little bit more public thing, but you could still ask your individual question. Okay. Well, I wanted my own meeting, of course, because I'm an American and I'm important. And I was working in Washington, D.C. That was very important in politics, which I thought was the center of the universe. So I want my own meeting because I'm important. I mean, incredible ego fixation. But I just kind of had the feeling in the back of my mind, and then you could request, so I put my name in with everybody else. And 6 people got individual meetings with Rinpoche at that time during the course. Of course, I was one of them, okay? I wasn't one of them because I was great. No, had nothing to do with me. It just, I had a link with Rinpoche. Rinpoche knew it. So somehow the karma, whatever my karma as well from my side, was ripening for me to meet my guru. And there was obviously some fortunate seeds ripening, the fact that I asked for the meeting. The fact that I asked for a meeting. I didn't have a burning question, but something propelled me, okay? So people ask me a lot, you go to a retreat with Rinpoche, for instance, Light of the Path retreat. Light of the Path retreats held in North Carolina every few years. Unfortunately, this year it was postponed till next year, but anybody can go. It's open to every level. It's 1 month from August to September. I've mentioned it before. And you can go for any period of time during that month, for a weekend, a week, like that. I know it costs money to fly over from England, if you're in England, to spend, they do keep the rates down. It's at a YMCA, but I do know there's an expense of doing that. But maybe that's something you decide to save the money for instead of a separate holiday. Again, karma from your side. What are you making happen? If the holiday is more important, people are going to do that. Okay? And what I started doing on this trip is I started choosing virtuous, choices that were presented to me to go to Kopan after I had injured my shoulder in a fall that time during that trip. I injured my shoulder, had to postpone my trek, could have hung out in Kathmandu in cafes, reading books and hanging out with people, okay? I saw the meditation course flyer in the cafe, chose to go to that. Fortunate karma ripening. Chose to ask for the appointment with Rinpoche. Many people didn't. Not everybody did, but a lot of people did. Some of them immediately said, oh, I'm going to go see, Geshe Lama Kunchok. I'm going to go see the abbot. Some people afraid of Rinpoche. It was very enigmatic, but you could feel this energy. So Rinpoche's trying to hook me and pull me to him. He knows who I am. I know nothing, right? And then I get this meeting. And then it kind of unfolded from there. So just to talk about your own openness to meeting the guru. There has to be some openness, which is one of the qualifications of being an appropriate disciple. That openness from your side. I do meet students that I don't need a teacher. I'm not interested. I don't need a teacher. Or when we lived in Santa Cruz, there were, Lama Zopa Rinpoche was living there part of the year. Another great Lama named Reba Rinpoche was living there all year. Other Lamas came through. And I was very close with some of these Lamas. So I asked the Lamas if there was occasionally one or two students that were really wanting to connect and meet a teacher, could I arrange an appointment? And they said, sure. So I brought some students with me for individual meetings, like just the two of us and the Lama, and we get a translator. Some of them needed a translator. And those students like to connect. So one of them got advice about meditation, all these things, and she has set her life up. And this, I'm talking about 20 years ago. This was 20 years ago. She went into the meeting, and then after she left, I think she had another meeting with him separately, and she set her life up for early retirement, and she's living in a condo in Santa Cruz, doing the retreats and the practices that he told her to do. She basically is spending her life following the advice. She just got down to it and said, this is what I want to do. She doesn't have kids. She never married. She totally made her life simpler because this is what she realized she wanted to do. And she's following the advice. She's having some good, I've seen her occasionally interacted and having some good experiences of doing that. It's a choice. Okay. There's other students I've met. One of them I brought, and then he ended up going off and doing something else and getting into different relationships that created a lot of confusion and complication in his life. He's a good guy. He's got a great heart, right? Not that it's a bad thing to do, but it's just, and he'll, sometimes there's an email that will come about, I wish I had followed the advice to do that. It would have been, this was a waste of time, or he can still do it, but we create obstacles from our side. We create the obstacles. So the faith for me was after I had the initial meeting, without much faith, honestly. I didn't know who Rinpoche was. I got a great feeling from him. I felt like he had some understanding, like he practiced bodhicitta that I just learned about in the course. I didn't really know what that word meant, but this was a person I met, and the first feeling I got in the individual meeting was he not only seemed to be walking the talk from what I could see in the little limited time I had, but he just seemed to so care about me more than anyone I've ever met did. Different from the way my parents cared about me. They loved me, there's no question. I'm very fortunate that way. But he seemed to have a broader thing of not just a kind of conditional love, like you do these things, or the parental love that you automatically feel towards your kids, but his love was about kind of getting me out of my suffering that I didn't think my parents were all that connected to. They didn't want me to suffer, but I didn't know if they had the tools to really help me dismantle the mechanisms that made me suffer. And occasionally they kind of contributed to it, meaning, if you have, I don't know if you have my parents were great, but if sometimes when we were little, my brother got beat up at school one day. He was picked on by some kids. And this was like middle school. Okay, the boys are like 11, 12, or 13. And my mother sent him back and said, you have my permission to beat them up, to hit them back. Lama Zopa Rinpoche is not going to tell you to harm someone else, okay? So you see, there's ways that you get conditioned of those kind of responses instead of an open-hearted response like that. So after that initial meeting, I left Kopan for about a week, and I had an amazing pull to go back. like it was home. And now I see how much of a spiritual home it's been for me. So I ended up going back, but I had plans for a completely different trip going south to Burma, Thailand, and Malaysia and Indonesia, and meeting some friends there. And it was relatively planned, but not in concrete, but that's what I was going to do for the rest of the trip, the 2 additional months. And then Rinpoche was planning a trip with 60 disciples to go to Tibet, which was relatively open then. And I had no intention of going to Tibet. But the week that I went back to Kopan to just stay there, there were courses conducted to learn Tibetan for people that were going. There were people that really weren't any more disciples than I was. I wasn't a disciple, that were newer to Buddhism, but there were older students there that were definitely going to go. They're like, this is going to be the trip of the year, you know, but I didn't have a connection with Rinpoche. So, you know, but I could start to hear this every day, to the point where I got really confused. And you know, you have these life challenges, these moments. What should I do? What should I do? And the students, the older students, were saying, you should just ask Rinpoche what to do. But I didn't have any context of that. As an independent American woman at the time, I would never ask anybody what to do with my life. Right? I'm going to make my own decisions. I'm not going to ask anybody what to do with my trip. However, please check, because we do ask people continually what to do at times. And I had consulted with friends about this trip to Asia, because some that had been there before me. Which countries are best to go to? Do you think I should go? Can I go alone? Oh, you've been to Thailand. Can I borrow your guide? Or do you have any tips? I did consult with people, right? But people maybe with limited consciousnesses. So now the idea, you get close to the truth, capital T truth, and you get nervous to ask. Like this pure mirror goes up, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the guru, right? And then that mirror shines back to you, okay? Many things of your fears and your insecurities and things you don't really want to see, okay? So fortunately, again, some positive karma ripening, and I decided to write a letter to Rinpoche, who was at Kopan at the time, but you couldn't see him but you could write him a letter, and I wrote a letter about my trip and what I was thinking. And at the end, I just said, I just want to know what's best. You know, Tibet, to go on the trip with him to Tibet, or the other, Malaysia, Indonesia. And you know, of course, in those, I wrote a long saga to him as if it mattered, my life. All the details of all the garbage that, you know, with this, my mother wants me to come back for that. And I mean, it was, oh my goodness. If you write a letter and you want to seek advice from a spiritual teacher, any spiritual teacher, please keep it concise. Get to the point quickly. If they need background and more history, they'll ask you. But if it's a highly realized being, they know. Rinpoche knows we're having this class right now. I have no doubt in my mind. That's the faith I've developed over the years. But this is how it started, with this initial letter and the meeting prior to that. Okay, so I asked, and again, we feel like we need to, and sometimes when people do meet with me, and I'm not any highly realized being, but students will consult, and I'll often, and I can see they're settling in for like the long history about who they are. And I'll just say, you know, it's better if you get to your question, and then if I need background, I'll ask for background, like that. So I wrote, and then the next day I got a letter back. Okay, I've never gotten a letter back that quickly from Rinpoche. Okay, in the old days there were less students, and the letter came back very simply in Rinpoche's handwriting, which is very distinct. And he said, Malaysia and Indonesia, great, but Tibet best. Okay, and the thing is, the students told me, if you write that letter, be prepared to follow the instructions. So don't write it and then ignore what he says. If you're going to ask any teacher again for advice, be prepared to follow the advice, or you will create obstacles on your spiritual path. I've had several friends, they got advice from one teacher, they didn't like the advice, So they asked another teacher and they got other advice. And they didn't like that advice, so they went to a third teacher and asked them. And then they got very confused because they got 3 different pieces of advice. So it's very conflicted. If you have trouble following the advice, I could have at that point written back right away to say what I'd have difficulty doing, what I didn't think I could do, and suggesting, could I possibly do this? Or if you're in an actual meeting with the teacher, express it right there if you can. If you go away and you need to think about it a little bit, that's fine, but then come back and write a message again. This is really difficult for me. I'm feeling I'd prefer to do this. Just be sincere rather than ignoring and not following the advice at all. That will create obstacles for you. But if you're sincere and you don't think you can do it, things like that, then express that and why. But I had already, before I wrote the letter, the better thing is before you ask the advice, ask it in a way, be skillful with your questions, okay? So you ask it in a way to get clarity on what you think you can follow. And for me, I was very clear before I wrote the letter, assessing if he says to go to Tibet, am I prepared to do that? And I knew how hard that was going to be because of the obstacles in Kathmandu at the time, getting the visa, getting, things like that. And I was prepared to do it. I had already assessed all that. Okay. So then the answer came back, Malaysia and Indonesia, great, Tibet, best. Okay. First time I asked advice. And then, even though in my meeting I had asked some advice that was another extraordinary thing, but I don't need to get into that right now. So what happens is, here's what deepened my faith. I get the answer. Some of you may have heard this story before, but then in those days in 1987, you needed to get a Chinese visa because Tibet is considered geographically China. The visas were very hard to get. And the reason was there was one telex operator in Beijing that you had to wire to, and everybody was on a budget traveling. The wire, you could meet and group the wire together with 5 other people. So 6 people could send the wire, which was expensive in that day in Kathmandu, to the telex operator. And that because there was one operator, and there were always rumors about the travel, they had gotten sick. And I met people in Kathmandu waiting 6 weeks to get this approval from them. You take then to the Chinese embassy in Kathmandu for them to process the visa. Okay, so that was one step alone. And I met people waiting and waiting for 2 months for this visa. They're just waiting for the telex operator. They hadn't heard back, having to check every day with this one bank that would do it. Okay, there were 1 or 2 banks that would do it. The second part is I needed to wire for money because I had money coming to me in Thailand. I wasn't going to Thailand, which was really easy to get money. I had to have it wired to Kathmandu. In those days, to the bank. To do that, the rumors were the banks would keep the money for some weeks, tell you the money had not arrived, and they were making interest on it. Obstacle number 2. Okay. Number 3, the Chinese visa. I knew people that went with all the proper telex approval, whatever, and they were denied a visa, or their visa was held up at the Chinese embassy. Number 4, I had to extend my visa to do all of this in Nepal. And that was also problematic because it was getting post-season. It was getting to May, which is post the main seasons. There wouldn't be a big line at immigration. And if there wasn't a line, they were insisting that you show them your bank receipts for changing money. And I had changed all my money on the black market because I got a much better rate. So I didn't have any of these bank receipts, and they were going to make me pay a lot of money if they were even going to issue an extension for my visa. So those are just a few of the obstacles I had. And this is what happens if you devote to the teacher, you plan to follow the instructions. The Buddhas make a way for you. This is where you get suddenly this thing of, you get closer to the Buddhas. You please the Buddhas. And I didn't know anything about this at the time, but just my own, looking back, my own experience, how it can unfold, provided you're open enough and willing to make the effort. It was effort. It was effort in a way, okay? So I go down to Kathmandu, and all the old students are wishing, like I told them, and they go, oh, you're going to Tibet, great. I said, if I can get a visa. And they all wished me well at the top of the Kopan Hill. Say Tara mantras, she'll clear the way for you. I mean, I had all the, and I go down and right away I had the money and I'm going up to the bank. The first step, number one, to the bank to do the telex. I tried to find other people to do it with. And you'd meet people in cafes coming into a cafe saying, does anybody want to send a telex for the Chinese visa? Like many times I'd be in a restaurant in Kathmandu and somebody would come in and make an announcement and say, we're looking for 2 more people. We're looking for 3 more people. Does anybody? So I didn't have the time to do it. I tried to find a couple people, couldn't find anyone. I decided to go to the bank myself and see if anyone was there or I would just pay myself. And I'm walking up the path to the bank and there's 5 people. And they said, do you want to do the telex? We need 1 more person. Okay? I do the telex. I go to wire money. I go to the bank where they said to wire the money. And I call this friend who's going to wire it from my bank account. They have all this stuff. And I get the money in 3 days. 3 days, I have the money. Okay? And then I take my process. The telex comes back within a week. I go to the Chinese embassy. And basically in a week or 2, I had my visa. Like, incredible. Nobody else had gotten a visa that quickly. Nobody else I met. They're all like, how did you got your visa in 2 weeks? You know, it was just, everything just kept unfolding. Everything just, I couldn't believe what was happening. I went to immigration in Kathmandu to extend my visa, and I'm the only one there now. So they're going to ask me for bank receipts. They have the time. There's no rush anymore of, you know. And I look through the little window, the old immigration thing was kind of a joke. And I look through the window. There's a man. I'm here to apply for a visa extension. And he looks through the window. He looks at me. And I'm ready for, you know, your bank receipts. And I'm thinking, you know, what am I going to say? And he looks through the window. And all of a sudden he says to me, Madam, would you like a cup of tea? What? Right? I was like, excuse me? And I said, yes, please. And he brings me around, says, come around the corner to this door. And I go through the door. And I'm sitting there for half an hour having a cup of tea with him while he puts the stamps in my passport. 1, 2, 3. No problem. Whatever. I paid him whatever for the visa. Never asked for bank receipts. I'm done. Right? Amazing. So suddenly I had this light go off about this light go on basically of, is that interesting? You know, I asked Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and you get the blessing. When you follow the advice of the guru, you get the blessing. Okay, that was my first piece of, so suddenly some faith started to develop of you try something. That's how faith develops for us. You try something. We don't have the built-in faith like my Asian brothers and sisters that sit there in an entire teaching with the Dalai Lama like this, just wrapped. We don't have that as Westerners. That's not our experience. So what did I do? I tried, asked. I was like enamored with what happened. Wow. They said the Buddhas were going to make a way. Well, they certainly have. Then we go to Tibet. Then there's Rinpoche, 5 weeks with Rinpoche in Tibet, going around and other experiences and other things and watching him, and fascinating. Okay. And then we're in Tibet and some things happen. And one little thing was Tibet at the time, the road in from Nepal to Lhasa was unpaved, dusty. And you're literally days on that bus. We stopped and took breaks in different towns, Shigatse, Jianse, but in between you're covered in dust. And I'm a layperson with long hair, covered in dust. Like you'd have a scarf on your face. Talk about the masks we wear, but you're covered. Every day you get off and everything's full of dust. And so I got an ear infection. I had it for 3 weeks. I never had an ear infection before, but the dust and everybody said it was common. And then I met a doctor from New Zealand in Lhasa and said, what should I do? And it's very painful. So she said, you know, don't put anything in your ears. Don't clean your ears out with Q-tips and things and cotton swabs. Just leave it, but you can take some aspirin or painkillers, but if it doesn't go away, you'll have to do something. And so I still had it. And then Rinpoche took us around. Every day there'd be an outing, often with Rinpoche, some holy temple, holy pilgrimage site, climbs up mountains and into dark shrines and pujas that went on for hours, and amazing because Tibet was somewhat open at the time, even though the Chinese were completely freaking out about Rinpoche leading this big group. And because I wasn't even a student, I was always at the back of the pack. And you had to listen through FM radios, and I didn't have a radio, so I'd have to listen to somebody else's radio out loud. Most people had earphones. And so one day Rinpoche goes into a shrine room with everybody, and he's giving medicine out to people. And he said, this medicine was made here, very holy, on and on, explains everything in the shrine room. So by the time I go into the room, everybody's come out, and I don't get any of the stuff about the shrine room. But as I'm stepping over the threshold, Rinpoche is coming out of the room. I'm the last person in the room. So we meet at this doorway. And of course, Rinpoche knows again, I'm going to be the director of Vajrapani for him. You know, I'm going to run some set, like he knows what, I know nothing. I just am intrigued by this person. He seems so incredibly kind, so amazingly kind. So, and Rinpoche stops and he says, oh, how are you? How are you? And I said, hello, Rinpoche. You know, I think I called him Lama Zopa in those days. Hello, Lama Zopa. Oh, you know, how are you? And then of course he says, how are you? So me being so self-absorbed, I said, you know, my ear hurts. I have an ear infection, right? So you know, it was totally painful, my ear. But I had, you know, I was very focused on it could get worse, and am I going to lose? I couldn't hear out of my ear for 3 weeks. I have an ear infection. And so of course, you know, I had heard like all the medicine was gone, that Rinpoche had given it out. Rinpoche holds out his hand. There's one pill left. Rinpoche says, here, this medicine, you just take this. So once again, because of my past experience, that I'm on the trip to Tibet, and I'd already gotten this really quick way of getting there, the visas and all, I had no problem. I took the medicine. I took it right then. I took it, and he said, take the medicine. And I thought, okay, took the medicine, no question, no hesitation. At that point, some faith developing. I trusted him. I had some trust already at that point from the couple of meetings. And the next day, my ear was fine. Now, you could say it would go away anyway. And I hadn't taken any medicine for it other than like a painkiller that she said wasn't going to do anything for the infection. I didn't take anything for the infection. I didn't take any antibiotics. I took this pill from the Holy Guru, right? And the ear thing was gone, completely gone the next day. No pain. I could hear perfectly. Part of my mind could say, well, it could have happened anyway, right? But again, a little deepening of faith. So I started really trusting and thinking, I'm going to ask him another thing later and see if I can follow it. So what I did over the next year, and then a year later, I saw him again in the States when I took refuge at Vajrapani Institute in California. But slowly I would ask a question that I knew I could follow the advice, a practice question, or I wanted to take refuge. And then the refuge ceremony alone was amazing with me and one other person. So that unfolded, and then ask another question about the practice that would deepen the practice for me. And I would follow the advice, and I would really, really like the result. That's how the faith developed. So I just felt it was better to tell a personal story, and I could go on with my retreats at Laudo and the advice Rinpoche had given me about those retreats, which one to start with. I would never have thought on my own to start with that particular retreat or to do that practice in the afternoon. And I have to say, all of it from my limited view has been absolutely perfect like that. Like I could not imagine. So the faith just deepened and deepened and deepened. So that's a way, again, checking on a small level of what you know you'll be able to follow the advice, and then do it wholeheartedly. Do it wholeheartedly. I had another experience later, and then I'll go on. And we have, well, two mental attitudes in relation to the guru: the faith through seeing their qualities and developing the kind of faith I had also mentioned, and respect. We develop respect for them about what? Remembering their kindness. So I thought it was so kind of Rinpoche to jump through all these hoops to take 60 people to Tibet. It was an incredibly difficult journey, with the Chinese throwing roadblocks, and literal roadblocks, every way that could happen, trying to interfere every way. And the difficult students that were fighting, and students that couldn't keep up. And I mean, over and over, he's done that repeatedly, over and over for us. So, and then I remember years later, I was at Vajrapani, one of our preliminary practice, making tsatsas. These are clay images, plaster images of Buddhas that help you purify. And it's a rigorous, expensive practice. And I was trying to do them in every break time that I had at the center. I had made, I don't know, 100,000. I'm supposed to make 200,000. So I'd done like 100,000 or more. And what happens is you're doing these molds and tiles and images of Buddhas. You can get molds at Nalanda Monastery in France. Beautiful molds they make. But some of them don't come out well, and they come out with holes in the face, and sometimes the whole head is messed up. And so what you do with the bad ones is you put them in a pile, and they're supposed to go inside of stupas. If anybody's building a big stupa, we were told you can put them inside. So it's very hard to get rid of the plaster images when you make them. So the Nundro is not just about making the images, but then you need to figure out what to do with these images. There are boxes and boxes and boxes of them. So some people, if you have a center like Land of Medicine Buddha or Land of Joy, you might be able to build a tsatsa house there, because the property will stay in the organization, it will remain Buddhist, and it's a sealed up little shed that you absolutely pack with holy images and things like that, things that you can't get rid of easily. You can also tie them high up in trees, the images, until nature just lets them dissolve. In the Himalayan regions, they stack them up and put them in tin cans in caves, like they're old soybean oil cans. And I did some at Laudo like that we stored in a cave up there, which is the way the people up there, the best thing they can do with them. So I had found somebody making a stupa in the United States, in Arizona, southwestern United States, and I'm living in California at the time. And I had friends that agreed to take 20 or so of my boxes of messed up images and to drive them out in the pickup truck to the person in Arizona. And the person in Arizona agreed. They're going to put them inside the stupa. Great. I am unloading like a lot of my tsatsas, the one, that aren't very good. And a lot of the good ones I gave away, people wanted them for. So after this process, after the truck leaves to Arizona, I get a message from one of Rinpoche's attendants, because they knew I was making tsatsas, that Rinpoche had gone into the tsatsa house at their house in California, where there's monks or nuns making tsatsas. There were boxes stacked up, and he picked up a tile, and there was a nun who was making them there, and he said, "What?" And he looked at the tile, and he said, "What's happening with these boxes?" And she said, "Well, they're not very good images, Rinpoche. They have bubbles in the face. So I found somebody with a boat, and they're going to take these and put them in the sea off the coast of Santa Cruz in California. And you can put them in the sea if they're really bad, and they don't tox out, or anyway, you can put them depending on what the materials are." And Rinpoche picked up one of the tiles and looked at it and said the fateful words, "These can be fixed." Okay. I nearly had a hemorrhage. Okay. I get the call. So the message to me was, if you have any like that, and the second message was, you can't put bad tsatsas inside a stupa. It will create huge obstacles for the person making the stupa, which is a shrine, or anybody that circumambulates that stupa, which is the point of stupas. We often walk around them clockwise. I nearly had a meltdown. I mean, I literally said to the attendant on the phone, "I need to go right now. I can't process this," because I was just working so much overtime for the center full time, and then trying to do these on the side. And this wasn't what I wanted to hear, right? So I left it for 3 days, but I knew I had to call the woman in Arizona. Again, sometimes your intention alone clears the karma. Sometimes just your intention to follow the advice can be good enough, okay? But not necessarily, but just that intention can change the outcome. So 3 days later, I called the person in Arizona, another Dharma student. I explained the whole thing, and I said, I will arrange. My friends with the pickup truck already left, and they weren't going to go back there. And I will arrange to have them picked up from you, and I have to bring them back because I have to fix them all. And then she said the magic words to me, don't worry about it, I'll fix them. So that alleviated that whole thing for me. But I did choose to follow the advice. And then the tsatsas I made from then on, I still had boxes and boxes with me that were also messed up. And I had to unload all of them, empty all of them. I had to look at every single image I'd made. And Rinpoche showed us with Fimo clay, molding clay, how you can just quickly move it over the face, whatever, and it fills the hole in. And I did that for all of them, right? And just making quality ones. So this is the difference. You have to check your mind. When I finished, I haven't finished all the tsatsas. I have about 25,000 more to make, but all the ones I did were high quality. And the point of these preliminary practices is quality over quantity. And I know I just felt so much better at the end, even though it took me so much longer, that I had done it as best as I could do it. I had done it the way Rinpoche wanted it done. That's what pleases the mind of the guru. And that is one of the best things you can do on planet Earth right now, is to please their holy minds. So it's not that I always please the guru, but those are just some instances that I specifically remember of Rinpoche being happy, or in here, in my heart, feeling the blessing more that I had done. You know when you're doing the right thing, you know when you're in sync, right? So it's a really wonderful feeling on your spiritual path like that. So let me talk a little bit more about faith. We cultivate an attitude of faith in the guru for our own benefit, not for the benefit of the teacher or the master. It's for our minds, okay? The stronger our faith becomes, the easier it is for us to practice and gain realizations. I've noticed times when my faith has waned a little bit and I seem to have more obstacles on the path. And then when it deepens again, the path starts accelerating, okay? So from Gyalwa and Sapa, another quote, whether or not you develop realizations depends on whether or not you have faith and how great or small that faith is. So just something to think about. And the faith we need to develop is to see the guru as an actual Buddha. That's what we mean by devoting in thought. This is possible because we put an end to our lack of faith. And here's the catch, by focusing on the qualities of the guru. This is very tricky now in the degenerate time. By focusing again on the qualities of the guru, not on the faults you may see. For your mind, this is all about benefiting your mind, focusing on the qualities, not the faults. The faith we then develop, okay, can overwhelm any trivial fault, okay? So you train yourself to see the guru as a Buddha by contemplating these 4 reasons. So when if you're doing analytical meditation on the Lam Rim, and you're focusing on this preliminary of guru devotion, it's very powerful. This is one of Lama Zopa Rinpoche's main teachings, is to get to analytical meditation on the Lam Rim every day, whether it's 20 minutes a day, but it starts to shift your mind. This is a really hard thing for Westerners to do. We don't like doing it, okay? But this is what transforms your mind. We do prayers, people meditate and do mindfulness meditation, and we recite prayers, and people will follow, if they have a tantric initiation, they follow a sadhana, which sadhana in Sanskrit means method of accomplishment. It's a practice, and you'll follow because you have a commitment to do that practice, but you'll do it without any real sense of faith that your guru is inseparable from that deity that you're visualizing, that's inseparable from the Buddha. Okay, you'll do it without any notion of emptiness, the nature of reality. So you're not actually practicing Tantra in that way. It's not necessarily accelerating you the quickest path, but you are leaving some imprints in your mind, especially if you have a good motivation. Okay? But this is what tends to happen. We'll do those sort of practices, but not the practices of meditating analytically on the Lam Rim. If you're doing it, for instance, with Guru devotion, let me explain. We've already been through the qualities of a guru. So what you would do is have, let's say you divide out 3 months of the year, you're going to focus on Guru devotion. Because Rinpoche gives instructions, and he'll have people take a year. You got 12 months, okay? And there's 3 scopes of the Lam Rim. So you can do each scope 4 months, okay? But maybe what you want to do is take a month out on Guru devotion, and that leaves you 3 more months on topics of the lower scope motivation: precious human rebirth, death and impermanence, lower realms of existence, refuge, karma, like that. So you have 5 other topics that you're going to stretch out over 3 months. And then you set up a schedule for yourself. Okay. So with Guru devotion, your schedule might look like this. You might do maybe 3 days reflecting on the qualities of a teacher till you know them backwards and forwards. Okay. You'll have some reflection a day on the qualities of a disciple, and you're circling from every angle with your mind. So you're kind of taking a quality of the guru. Well, they have some practice of ethics. They seem to be, and then I'm going to check my teachers and say, yeah, I don't have any experience of them lying or cheating people or stealing. I've seen Rinpoche go out of his way to avoid killing insects. Not harming. You'll go through all those kind of qualities of that shows a subdued kind of moral compass, that they're keeping to a moral compass. And I'm going to go through it with different teachers. Yes, they seem to be following. And then I might go and spend some time reflecting on the fact that they have seem to have a meditative, focused mind, very concentrated mind, and seem to have that depth of meditation. Not that I'll know it in a realization way, but there's something that impressed me about Lama Zopa Rinpoche like that. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you can tell from some of the teachings you might attend with him. He's doing them online now. He's got this depth of meditative ability, something you can feel. So you go slowly through those angles and make sure you're clear on them. You won't know maybe that they have a direct perception of emptiness, but the way Rinpoche teaches, it seems like he does. The way he talks about emptiness over and over. The different ways he comes to emptiness to get us to understand it. Different ways to help us meditate. So you're going to, analytical meditation analyzes from every angle. Okay? And maybe something you read in the scripture that moved your mind. Okay? So you want to keep going along like that. And then you'll have a few days on that. And then you want to review another 3 days, I'd say. The advantages to devoting well. Those 8 qualities we mentioned. You get closer to the Buddhism. But really think about it here. Get closer. I'm going to fulfill all my temporal and ultimate wishes. Like, that would be fantastic, right? And then you want to review the 8 disadvantages. So those are kind of preliminaries, okay? But you want to spend some time to at least know those so they sit in the mind. You're absorbing your mind ultimately with analytical meditation. And what you do is you're trying to get the intellectual knowledge here, down here to the heart level where there's an experiential realization, where you suddenly have faith in the Guru as the Buddha. You have an aha moment. And then what you're going to do is take any focused meditation like Shine, stabilizing meditation. Shine simply means calm, abiding. And I'm going to take that energy and place it on that aha moment to deepen the experience, to deepen the realization. So again, I'm going to take the placement or stabilizing meditation, Shine in Tibetan, Shamatha in Sanskrit, calm, abiding. And anytime I have a deeper, juicier experience of that topic of the meditation, I'm going to focus and deepen that experience. That's how we combine placement meditation with analytical meditation, the 2 main meditations we do in this tradition. So this is the important part now, the 4 reasons. of how to see the guru as a Buddha that make up the predominant part of devoting to the guru in thought, devoting to the spiritual teacher in thought. Number one, Vajradhara stated that the guru is Buddha. Vajradhara stated that the guru is Buddha. What does that mean? Vajradhara, in a sense, is a model of the primordial Buddha, the primordial omniscient mind. He was the one that Shakyamuni Buddha came from, in a sense, more on a metaphorical level that somebody would see in their realizations. The Buddha Vajradhara promised that in degenerate times, well, that's now, that's us now. Look at our planet, okay? He would appear among us in the form of a teacher, spiritual friend, a virtuous friend, as we've talked about the word teacher and guru, and that we would meet and recognize him. Therefore, we can have full faith that amongst our spiritual guides, there must be at least one emanation of Vajradhara. So once again, he promised in degenerate times. There's a quote in Liberation in the palm of your hand. So I was on a retreat at Laudo, and I had all a few Lam Rim books with me. And for some reason, there was one of the quotes in this section of Guru Devotion that resonated with me. And the quote is, during the last 500-year period, I will manifest as a teacher. You must recognize that I am this one, and then generate reverence toward him. Now, it's written as him due to the times, the male-oriented times like that. But again, during the last 500-year period, that's the degenerate time. That's what they mean by degenerate time. I will manifest as a teacher. This is what Vajradhara says. I will manifest as a teacher. Okay. You must recognize that I am this one, and then generate reverence toward him. Okay. Here comes His Holiness the Dalai Lama. I don't see Vajradhara or Thousand-Armed Chenrezig. Why? My karma is not pure enough. Here comes Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Okay. Again, I don't see a Buddha that he could represent. I don't see him looking like Vajradhara, even though I have to say sometimes he has to me a little bit, but my karma is not pure enough. Okay. But I'm going to think about this quote. So here's another example of the guru. This is back to root guru that I mentioned, root guru. And let me go back and just read you just one little update again about root guru that I wanted to talk about. Okay. Here we go. Your root guru can be a teacher from among any of the subcategories I talked about last week, meaning you have, as we know in normal learning, we have a teacher that taught us the alphabet. You have a teacher that taught you how to write the alphabet. You may have had a teacher that taught you how to read. You had a teacher that then taught you basic maths. And then you have a teacher that might have taken you through physics. You had, for me, in my English Lit class in high school, it was very different than the teacher that I studied Shakespeare and Milton with when I got into university. Different level, okay, you have different levels. You have, for me, for instance, for some people, I'm the person that gave them refuge. So they've got refuge precepts with me, which makes that a little bit more significant than just the teacher that you happen to show up for one hour session. You just wanted to check them out. That's a different level of a teacher. And then you might have had a teacher that taught you about basic refuge. You didn't take refuge with them, but they explained some of the basic Lam Rim principles, that level. Then you might have a teacher you take bodhisattva vows with, deeper level, higher level. Okay. Then you're going to have what I call a Vajra guru. These are the ones you take, and they have to be a qualified teacher that you feel is a qualified being to take tantric vows with. Very high level teacher that they're going to take you through a tantric empowerment. And they need to be qualified to do it. And there are certain qualities about the tantric master. Okay. So of any of those teachers, one of them, any of those could be your root guru. Doesn't mean the root guru has to be the tantric one or the one. Now, granted, a lot of times the root guru is someone with higher realizations. But to go on, a root guru is most likely one of your teachers who is a Mahayana master or a tantric master. Generally, I prefer your root guru is one with higher realizations. Your root guru is your spiritual mentor who most moves and inspires your heart and mind, who has the most profound effect on you, and with whom you feel the strongest connection. Your root guru is especially the individual to whom you entrust your spiritual life in this and all your future lives. So again, for me, I have many teachers, and this is not about taking many teachers, but it's basically about, I tend to ask most of my advice from Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It's evolved like that over the years from these certain ways he has shown me the connection that we have. So here's another example. I may have mentioned this before. In 1998, Rinpoche led a 3-month Vajrasattva retreat at a center in California called Land of Medicine Buddha. And I think like 100 people came from around the world, but I had done the retreat, I think it was 99 that he did it, or over the winter turning 1999. But I had done the retreat at Laudo in 1998 on my own. And I took a sabbatical from Vajrapani and went with Rinpoche's blessing. Like I checked with him, I'm thinking to do this Vajrasattva retreat. If I can take the break from the community, I think I tried to resign as director, and then Rinpoche didn't want me to do that. So he said, just take a break. And I left for a few months and did the Vajrasattva retreat. Now I'm back, and I could only come to the retreat at Land of Medicine Buddha on the weekends because I had to be at work at Vajrapani. So I would come on the weekends and sit, but I'd already done the retreat and counted the mantras, but Rinpoche was teaching, and I wanted to get as many teachings like that. It was wonderful. So because I could only come on the weekends, I had to sit in the back, and there was tons of people there in front of me. And Rinpoche's on the throne one day talking about Guru devotion. And it happens to be in the yellow, there's a thick yellow book that were made about that retreat from the Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive you can order, called The Teachings from the Vajrasattva Retreat. It's got some amazing teachings in it. And Rinpoche said on the throne about Guru devotion, because Vajradhara said the first step is the Guru is the Buddha. That's why you can see the Guru is the Buddha, because Vajradhara said so. Okay? And then Rinpoche said, sitting on the throne, there's a quote. There's a quote. So immediately my mind jumped to the quote, because I had just spent a lot of time at Laudo meditating on Guru devotion, and I remembered that quote. I memorized it for some reason, because I don't memorize a lot of things that easily. And this jumped into my mind, but I'm all the way at the back. And Rinpoche says, does anybody know the quote? Sometimes he'll ask general, and I kind of looked around, and then you question yourself. You doubt. Is it the quote I'm thinking about? I'm kind of shy to say something. Maybe it's not the quote and I'll get it wrong. And, and I'm kind of sitting in the back thinking, I don't know, should I raise my hand? And nobody knows the quote. Nobody says anything. And then finally, I think I closed my eyes again, and then the quote came into my mind. And then I opened my eyes, and Rinpoche is looking right at me, like right through me in the back. And then he goes on to say the quote. So again, it was just yet another, what I'm seeing from my side, which I know is limited, but another connection of, he knew exactly what I was doing at Laudo. He knew what was in my mind. He's always known what's in my mind from the first meeting I had with him. And he made it evident and has shown me again and again that he knows what's in my mind. In a positive way, not in a scary way, in a positive way. So I have the faith to continue to ask him for advice, because he knows what is best. He knows how my mind works. That's the really qualified guru. Okay. So what you would do with that statement, Vajradhara stated that the Guru is the Buddha, is I spent time, session after session, okay, and I was doing another retreat, but this is what I would do as part of the retreat session, is some meditation on the Lam Rim. It's really brilliant. It really changes the mind. And what I would do is I memorized the quote from the book. I read that section, which is a bigger paragraph, several paragraphs about why Vajradhara said the Guru is the Buddha. And I read all those parts, but I highlighted some of the essence, and that just those highlighted could be one sentence, was the part I went over and over from every angle, over and over until things start to melt down. You know, something starts to soften where I'm realizing that Rinpoche is this emanation. This could be Rinpoche. You know, I could see Rinpoche that way. It benefits my mind over and over like that. So that was one point, is Vajradhar stated, this is a degenerate time. Look at the planet. Look how much difficulty people are having practicing Dharma. This is one of the symptoms of a degenerate time. It's really shifted for me over the last 30 some years, the way people used to practice, the way people used to make space for doing longer retreats in their life. It was a major event. And so one example I give is all the times I've been to Laudo, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche's sister, who is a nun at Laudo, running Laudo in her 70s, is still there. I hope she lives forever. She's a dear friend. And when I would be up there, even a little bit on the late side, the 90s, when I would be up there in the 90s doing retreats, there would be a number of people that would come up and do a retreat for a month, 2 months. So she developed friendships with these people, and they would come back. They'd come back like 5 years later or 2 years later. And now when I go up and she mentions all these people, now a lot of them have gotten older, so they can't walk to Laudo anymore. But a lot of these people just said, oh, I don't feel like going up there. It's too hard, right? It's an incredible retreat space. It's just an amazing place to meditate with a holy cave, holy to Lama Zopa Rinpoche, if you're connected at all to our centers and to Rinpoche. And she really kind of bemoans to me sometimes this loss of these friends of hers that she met that used to come regularly. And I know many of them, and they go, oh, it's too hard to go now. It's just so far, and it's so difficult up there. And, you know, it's easier now. There's electricity and there's some water. I mean, it's actually easier, but it's challenging. It's cold and remote. So it's like, for me, it's a sign of degenerate times, how the little bit we're practicing. And also how, on another note, just briefly, as we know our relationship with that delicious pair of words. Are you ready? Social media. Okay, please be skillful. Okay, I'm just gonna pop in to see everybody for a moment. Has anybody watched, I think it's Netflix, The Social Dilemma? Has anybody seen that? Okay. Okay, thank you, Yuri. And Stuart maybe has seen it. June has seen it, great. Watch it. Watch it. It's the greatest horror film that is out there right now. And my niece, who's 29, so this is that generation, and even a little bit younger than her, they call them Gen Z, Generation Z now. These are the kids that got phones in middle school, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old. My niece was a little after that, her generation just slightly after that. But the 10, 11, 12-year-olds with the phones now, I don't know if they have a prayer, because it's part of their consciousness, the manipulation from social media. So watch that film and delete all your social media accounts. Okay. No, and the thing is, I'm very protective, because I still have social media accounts that I post mostly to promote something I'm doing for a center. And I'm trying to be careful with it, because I'm not really on that much. And be very skillful, because it's quite an interesting film about how it, anyway, it's very interesting. Watch it. So the name of the film is The Social Dilemma. Thank you, Yuri. The Social Dilemma. Okay. Point number 2. Okay. The next point we would meditate on is proof that the Guru is the agent of all the Buddha's good works. Okay? The proof that the Guru is the agent of all the Buddha's good works. So they give you some analogies that are beautiful. This, just as a single moon in the sky appears as separate reflections on the surface of water that stands in different containers or on the ground, or the exalted wisdom of the minds of all the Buddhas, which is bliss and emptiness. That's the exalted wisdom. appears in various aspects to subdue different disciples. So just like the way the moon reflects on water that's around the earth, in the same way, but through that exalted wisdom, okay, that's the way that the guru can do the work of the Buddha, like that, okay? Because of our good fortune, the Buddhas appear to us in the aspect of spiritual masters, okay? If they appeared in a lower form, we wouldn't accept them. If your guru is a dog, I don't know if you're familiar with the story of Maitreya and a Sangha. Famous story. And there's some brilliant stories. If I have some time to get into it, because I did want to go through a few things with Milarepa and Marpa. The famous story, this story is quite beautiful, a Sangha and Maitreya. Okay, a Sangha, 12 years meditating in a cave. 12 years meditating in a cave to see Maitreya. He wants to see his guru, Maitreya. A lot of his point is, I really want to see Maitreya. I really want to devote to Maitreya and follow his advice. And after 3 years, he bags it and he gives up. I see nothing. I'm sitting all day. I see nothing. But what he had seen in that 3-year period was there was an eagle that he kept watching when he'd take a break outside the cave. He'd come out and there'd be an eagle that was kind of passing this rock cliff. And he could see that every time the eagle passed to get into its cave, it smoothed a piece of the rock cliff slowly. He could see that the little lightweight wing of the eagle, which is very light compared to rock, had somehow over time smoothed the rock cliff. This is what he came out when he saw after 3 years, I'm done. He'd watched the eagle and he thought, well, if the wing of the eagle, the light little wing, the feather, can make that, do that to the rock and smooth it, maybe my meditation is doing something for my mind. So he goes in for another 3 years. Okay? 3 years, nothing happening. His mind's the same. He doesn't see Maitreya. He comes out and he goes, I'm done. I'm done. Not doing this anymore. So, and what happens is he's sitting outside all forlorn, hasn't seen Maitreya. I want to see my guru. There's water dripping next to him in a little kind of stone thing that's carved out of the rock. And he turns and he sees the water dripping. And he sees that the little drop of water has made a dent in the stone. Like it's had this impact. It's just a little drip of water, one little drip over time. And he sees the drip. And once again, he gets motivated and he thinks, well, if that little drip can do that to the rock, maybe my meditation's doing something to my mind. So he goes back in for 3 more years. Gives it up again, comes out. And I forget there's a third thing that he sees. Does anybody remember? I can't remember. There's a third thing that he sees in the stream, but basically you get the gist, right? And what happens is he comes out and he gives up. He says, I'm done doing the meditation. And so he goes, I'm going to go to town. He walks to town. And as he's walking to town, he passes a dog lying there in the street. And he sees the dog is lying down. He can't really move, but it keeps turning swiftly, like to snarl and bite something on its back quarters. And as a Sangha gets closer, he bends down, he sees the whole back half of the dog is filled with maggots that are eating the dog. And the dog's got all this rotted flesh and it's smelly and he has such compassion for this dog and it's breaking his heart. And he says, I can't leave the dog. I need to try to get the maggots off the dog. So he starts to try to pull the maggots off, but he realizes that when he pulls them off, they die. So he can't pull them off with his hands. He's got to figure out another way to get the maggots off. So he cuts his own flesh, cuts like a chunk out of his thigh, puts it there, but the maggots won't go onto the flesh, onto the rotted flesh. So he decides that the only thing he can think of to do, now I'm not saying we're going to go this far, okay, is he's going to reach out, get really close to the dog, and he's going to stick his tongue out, close his eyes, and the maggots would go onto his tongue, and then he could transfer them onto the flesh. And he's doing this, and as soon as he leans in with his tongue out, the dog turns into Maitreya, his guru. So now what the likelihood with us is if we see a maggot-infested dog on the side of the road, we're not going to devote. A Sangha was unusual, okay? But what a Sangha did is he got so excited. First he was a little angry at Maitreya, and he said, where have you been? He said, 12 years I've been meditating. Nothing happened. You never came. And then what did Maitreya say? He said, I was the eagle. I was the eagle sweeping the cave rock, smoothing the cave rock. I was the drop of water coming down. I was with you every moment. I was the dog, like that. So a Sangha was so excited. Karma purified, so much purified. Bodhicitta in his heart merged. He's so excited, he hoists Maitreya onto his shoulder. Out of respect, you never have the guru's feet touch the ground. You never have them at your level. They have to be higher than you. He puts a cloth on his shoulder, a clean cloth, puts Maitreya onto his shoulder to celebrate, rejoicing, carrying him into town so everybody can see Maitreya and make a connection. People's minds aren't that pure. Okay? What did people see when he got into town? What did people see on his shoulder? Anybody?
A dog.
They saw a maggot-infested dog. Yeah. Thank you. They saw a maggot-infested dog on his shoulder, and they were like, he's crazy, right? One old woman who had pure enough karma was able to see Maitreya's feet. That was all. She saw the top of the dog, the rest of the dog, but she could make out the feet. She said that I see the feet are there, like that. Okay. So if the Buddha, if Rinpoche shows up as a maggot-infested dog, I could tell you, I'm going to miss it. I'm not going to see it. And the other thing is, we don't have the karma pure enough to see when you look at his holiness, do you see Thousand-Armed Chenrezig, the Buddha of infinite compassion, in that form? Or do you see a Tibetan-looking man dressed in maroon like this? Okay. So again, our spiritual guides are all skillful emanations of the Buddhas created in order to subdue us. Okay. And again, if they're in a low form, we won't see them. If they're in a high form, we don't see them because we don't have pure enough karma. Here's another analogy. Just as a magnifying glass focuses the sun's rays, we receive the blessings of the Buddha in dependence on the Guru. The Guru is the agent of all the Buddha's good works because he makes you perform positive actions. That's what the Guru encourages you to do. Since the Buddhas do not need to depend on ordinary beings to accomplish their work for others, the Gurus must be Buddhas. So again, in meditation, and for me, I had Lama Zopa Rinpoche there already in my mind, or His Holiness the Dalai Lama you could take, or any other teacher that you have, right? And you can think about the image. I really like the image of the magnifying glass. The magnifying glass that when I put it between the sun and wood, it's going to burn the wood if it's at the right angle and I hold it there long enough. That's the Guru, illuminating, shining that light, focusing the light in the right way so that it ignites the fire of the Dharma in me. That's the role of the Guru. Incredibly powerful like that, to think about it. There's another analogy they use in the Lam Rim, your mouth. In order to get food in, and I'm talking about for normal beings, not people fed with a feeding tube and things like that, but for normal beings, the way you get food to your stomach is through your mouth. That's the Guru. The food is the nourishment of the Buddhas, the Dharma. Okay, the only way I can get it into my stomach is it's got to go through my mouth. And that's the role of the Guru. To basically, the way Rinpoche will explain dense teachings, or any of the teachers, how they make the teachings palatable so we can understand it and apply it to our lives, that's the role of the qualified teacher, the qualified Guru. So you'd take some time meditating. You'd first read those sections in the Lam Rim books, highlight the most essential aspects of it. So when you go back to meditate, you're just looking at the highlighted lines. You're not reading again. That's not the way we do analytical meditation. I might be focused on one verse, one line, over and over. So the Gurus, and I'll think about the analogy of the magnifying glass over and over. I'll think about the analogy of the moon reflecting in all these different bodies of waters to display that very profound wisdom, that it comes from that. That's the light from the Buddha, but I can't always get those teachings synthesized in my mind. Who explains it to me is the Guru, who shows me in a form. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche manifests in a form that my karma is able to make a connection with. That means Sherpa monk. That's what I am able to see. And here's an interesting thing. So I traveled, some of you know, for 2 years with a Lama named Kirti Senchab Rinpoche. He lived in Dharamsala. He was one of the teachers of Lama Zopa Rinpoche and His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Incredibly high master, and from the Amdo region of Eastern Tibet. But he lived in Dharamsala. So I had the good fortune to travel with him and plan some tours in '94 and then in the 2000s for a couple of years. And we would be in big airports. And it was so interesting to see the way people responded to him in airports, okay? Based on your mind, your karma, okay? There were people that never saw him, just walked by. There were people, and there were 3 of us always that looked like this, his attendant and me, all dressed in Tibetan, in maroon robes. There were people that looked at us and kind of had hostile feelings of fear. It seemed like fear around us, kind of weren't sure what was going on there. There were people that would smile at us as we went by. And there were people, when we were waiting in a waiting room once, there was an Asian guy that raced over, dropped to his knees in front of Rinpoche like this, put his head down, and he said, he didn't know who Rinpoche was, but he had to, right there, devotion. Please, could I get a blessing? Could I get a blessing? There were people, there was the pilot of Iberia Airlines, one of the flights we took, the Spanish Airlines, came into our section, heard there was this monk. He came into our section and he said to me, all excited, this is just a regular Spanish guy. Is this the Dalai Lama? He said to me, is this the Dalai Lama? And I said, no, it's not the Dalai Lama, but he lives near him. He's another in the same lineage. And he said, I don't care, I want a blessing. Can I get a blessing? He said, my sister's a Buddhist. Can you sign this? Can he sign this for me? I'll give it to her. Some devotion, like some clarity in their minds, not a Buddhist, but openness, where other people were like pulling their children away. Like, oh, what is that? Hare Krishnas? I don't know. I don't want to be indoctrinated. So I saw all these experiences, not from Rinpoche's side. He was just walking. It's from your side, from your mind side. You're creating the connection. Okay, and this gets into when we see fault, which I'm going to talk about next week. What happens when we see fault? Is it the guru? So go back again to what I said earlier. Faith develops when we focus on their qualities, okay? However, I am going to talk about next week as well, but what happens when there are serious problems going on? Do I just ignore it and say, everything's fine, they're the Buddha? Okay, so we're going to talk about that next week. Reason number 3, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are still working for sentient beings. Buddhas and these are again, the main points of how can I see the guru as Buddha. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are still working for sentient beings. What does this mean? The Buddhas unmistakably know the situation of all of us, okay? They still love us. I have made so many mistakes. Lama Zopa Rinpoche still loves me, still wants me to be free, will do anything he can based on my karma and my participation to help get me free. Sometimes we put walls up from our side, right? The wall is only from our side if it's a qualified guru, okay? They will love us. Okay, I would say more than a mother loves your child in some ways. Some of the experiences I've seen with Rinpoche, I'm just amazed. I'm just amazed. They will always work for us, okay? So if they're always in that space, and they're working for us now, it doesn't stop. It doesn't stop because your guru is on the other side of the planet. It doesn't stop because your guru has passed away. Kirti Senchab Rinpoche passed away in 2006. I know he's still around me somehow. I don't see him, but I know he's somehow still around me. That mind still there somehow. And so here's the other thing. The Buddhas developed bodhicitta, the enlightened attitude, solely for the sake of sentient beings. They practiced the path solely for the sake of sentient beings. They became enlightened solely for the sake of sentient beings. And now they're enlightened. Their whole point is to keep working for us. Like, why would they stop? That's their whole point. That's the whole premise of why they live. Since the Buddhas can't simply transfer their realizations to us, they help sentient beings by teaching the entire path to enlightenment. That's how they help us. So the Buddha, that's the whole Buddhas, that's their whole energy. So who's doing this now? The teacher, the guru, is doing it now. It's always happening, and this just happens to be how they're doing it. Because from the previous reason is because the guru is an emanation, an emissary, a representation of the Buddhas, like that. So therefore, if it's our present gurus that are leading us along, helping us to gain realizations, they must be Buddhas. So again, go through the Lamrim, highlight the main points, and then over and over. I mean, it helps if you're doing it every day, analytical meditation. I know that's hard for people, but if you really start doing it, you'll start to see some results like that. You will start to see results. I know it's hard. Again, people have said to me, I don't like analytical meditation. I don't know how to do it. Yes, you do know how to do it. Okay? Have you ever had, and we've talked about this before, I think. Do you ever not like your boss? Mm-hmm. You ever have a problem with your boss or a coworker or a neighbor? I know with Stuart and June, remember those neighbors? Because I do. We heard one of their rows one night, okay? But you have an issue sometimes with someone, and then what do? You go, oh, you turn it over in your mind, all the negative qualities about them. How horrible they are. I can't believe he said this, and they did this, and they did that. And they, we also do it in the case of attraction and desire. You turn it over in your mind. Then you get somebody else involved in that with you. Did you see how glorious they look? Did you see what she was wearing tonight? Did you see how beautiful his eyes are? Did you hear what he said about that? That's analytical meditation. Or you do it in the negative way. There's a jerk, and then he said that, and you do it over, and you tell other people, and you analyze to get yourself to the realization that they're a jerk or that they're perfect. But that's not the best way to do it, because you're cultivating desire and hatred. That's not the best way to do it. So here you're doing, turning around to convince yourself the guru is the Buddha. Why? It's good for your mind. It's good for your mind. Okay. And here's number 4 reason. Our perceptions are fallible. Can you trust all appearances? Are you seeing everything accurately? We think we are. We think we are, okay? So just because our guru appears ordinary, just because you'll see Lama Zopa Rinpoche as a monk or His Holiness looks like a Tibetan monk, it doesn't mean that they are. How we perceive things is untrustworthy, uncertain. Okay. Our perception depends on our karma and the level of purity of our mind. So it was the same thing of Atisha and Maitreya, of what he saw at first was the maggot-infested dog, like that. So not Atisha, a Sangha. And so again, and did you ever notice how you have a perception of something? You walk into a room. I've mentioned this before. You see people across the room, and somebody glances at you, but they don't say hello, but you know them, and and then that. And then, but what happens is in your mind, then a story starts from that perception. But you don't know the whole story, but we think we do. And then we make a whole tale about it. And then later I find out that the person was wrong. The person that looked over at me casually with not a positive look, and I interpret it as something negative, and I start thinking, what did I do wrong? Why didn't that person wave to me? They don't like me. Why did I come to this party? I hate myself, right? I mean, it gets very extreme with people. And later you find out that the person was engaged in a conversation they weren't comfortable in. They wanted out. They wanted to try to get our attention, to have an excuse to get out of the conversation, but didn't know how to tactfully do that. So they just thought it was rude to look away for too long, and then went back, and they were kind of stuck in this conversation. But we get so self-absorbed, then we start projecting it has to be something about ourselves, and we're completely, entirely wrong. So we have many misperceptions. So when you start realizing that more and more, I think just because I'm not seeing 1,000 Dharm Chen Reisig doesn't mean that His Holiness isn't an emanation of that Buddha, of infinite kindness, infinite compassion. And it's the same thing where you could say, there's one example here. A dog, if you know how people put, they sell these Buddha statues in garden centers. Do they do that in England as well? People put them in their gardens. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche saw one of these at a center, but it was on the ground. And with the Tibetans and other people that see the Buddha, they would never put it on the ground. You'd have to put it on a platform, and the platform would have to be at least to the height of your knee and up. So you wouldn't have the Buddha lower than that. And Rinpoche saw this on the ground and was like, that's really bad, but we at least saw a Buddha statue. A dog may come over and go to the bathroom on it because it sees like a metal, like a fire hydrant. It wouldn't know the difference. So it's just, again, based on your level of realization, and humans are said to have a higher consciousness than most animals, we would see something and have something different. The higher your level of realizations get, you would then maybe see a living Buddha in the statue, like that. We don't see our gurus as Buddhas simply because we don't have the special valid cognition to see them that way. We don't have a direct perception of emptiness like that. So I wanted to go through those 4 points. And again, because how do we see the guru? How do we devote with thought is to see the guru as the Buddha. Why do we do this? How can we do this? What's the proof? Because Vajradhar stated the guru is the Buddha. There's proof that the guru is an agent of all the Buddha's good deeds. Number 3, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are still working for sentient beings. And number 4, we can't be sure of appearances. And from Pabonka Rinpoche, we have attained the realization of guru devotion when we are convinced that the above reasons prove the spiritual guide to be a Buddha and experience a kind of mingling of the guru with all the Buddhas. So I just want to ask right now, based on that so far of what we've discussed today, any questions right now? And any questions from anything you may have been reading during this week, or any ability to get to some of the meditations like that? Nothing at all? Because otherwise is that Bill? Yeah.
And Amy, I was just trying to phrase my questions. Listening to you this evening, it's the guru is a Buddha. Is it, what about if the guru isn't a Buddha, but the Buddhas are speaking through them? Or what if they're ordinary people and then over time they become very, very realized and even enlightened? So there's I'm looking at 3 scenarios there. Have you any comments or?
So can you clarify again? So you're saying if it's an ordinary being,
yeah,
but you're from your side choosing to see them, like you've kind of seen that they're your spiritual teacher, and you want to have this mindset. So I didn't quite get clear on the question.
No, the first one is that they are actually a Buddha, say a reincarnated. Okay. Yeah. The other option is that they may be an ordinary person, but when they teach, the Buddha is teaching through them. And my third option is they start off as just an ordinary person, and over time they become highly realized and even enlightened. So is it a combination, or is it definitely the first one, they are a Buddha?
Well, I think that it's more from the side of your mind, how you're developing that connection. It doesn't matter what they are technically. However, we have a lot of false gurus in our traditions and our cultures, people that can lead you astray. But if you're actively checking from a good premise, like based on the qualities we mentioned, and again, if you're taking the time to check, like His Holiness said, gave a specific time period, you should spend 6 years being a spy on your guru. You don't jump and take this person with this spirit. It's a very significant relationship if you're entrusting someone with your spiritual life, spiritual guidance. So once you've checked those qualities thoroughly and checked out a certain person that you think you can really learn from in a certain way, it's good for your mind just to see them as a Buddha, whether they are or not. So they could be any of those three things, Bill.
Yeah.
They could really be an enlightened being. They could be somebody in a sense where they're channeling that energy, you know, or they could be somebody that is aspiring on the path and becoming enlightened.
Yeah, fine.
That's the way I see it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Again, the real magic of it, the real thing you want to get is it's from your mind side. And it because it is a prelude to the Lam Rim. Guru devotion is actually a preliminary to the Lam Rim. It comes before the actual topics of the Lam Rim. That's why it's there. That's how significant it is in Tibetan Buddhism to have a teacher, the significant role of the teacher. And that's why it's a big struggle for Westerners. Because for us, we're so fiercely independent, we get into all the negative aspects of somebody guiding us and all the negative experiences we've had of bad teachers or parents that we hated or things like that. You know, and some of us are from a generation of kind of renegades, rebellion against authority like that, where the Asians are quite the opposite of that. So it's really how your mind is holding the information in order to develop that succulent relationship that it can be hugely beneficial.
Yeah, I realize it's my mind I'm training, isn't it? No one else's. And this is why generally for us it comes at the end of the Lam Rim, doesn't it? It's
Sorry,
not
what comes at the end?
The spiritual guide. It's not the first one on the Lam Rim for us. Generally, for Westerners, it seems to be the last one we do.
It's the last one. I teach it last when I teach a general Lam Rim class, but it's actually the first thing preliminary when you go to all the Lam Rim books. It's the first thing out of the gate is about the teacher, that Tibetan system. The reason I teach it last, and a lot of Western teachers teach it last, is it's better to present it that way for Westerners. Like to give us all the other tools and then come back and go, do you really want help on this path? Do you want help with these topics? Well, here's the key, because it is the key. And I would reiterate the title of the book I showed you the first week, the beautiful book that's recommended for this class. But I have some other books I can recommend as well. The Heart of the Path, it's called, because it is the heart of the path, Guru devotion. And I just feel that with my limited knowledge, I feel that more and more as the path has unfolded for me. It is the heart of the path. Now you can say bodhicitta is the heart of the practice, but the heart of the path is to get you to develop bodhicitta. All those other realizations come from the Guru and come from having proper Guru devotion. That.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, thank you. Anything else?
I've got a question. The quote about from Vajradhara saying the Guru is Buddha, where does that come from?
They came from the Buddha.
Right.
These teachings all come from the Buddha.
Is it in one of the sutras, though, that particular quote?
Oh, where did the quote come from?
Yes, well, is it in Sutra of the Tantra?
Right, that Vajradhara said. Said. So I would kind of, the way I interpreted that was, and this is also in the teaching from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, is Shakyamuni Buddha and all the other Buddhas that have manifested, because we are considered, there's 1,000 Buddhas of what is called the fortunate eon, which is what we're in now, even though we're in the degenerate time of that. There's 1,000 Buddhas. Shakyamuni Buddha, simply one of them. Okay, I think he's the third one, possibly. Okay. But as a result, I feel like he channels that primordial omniscient essence, that primordial merged with compassion, wisdom, all those good qualities. And they call that primordial essence Vajradhara.
Right. Okay.
So I think he's using that as an example of that. That's the way I interpreted it.
Right.
Like, when did Vajradhara live? Who is Vajradhara? I don't know if I'm not clear on pointing to an era or a time where this is Vajradhara, but he is that essence of what Shakyamuni Buddha represents on that fully manifest level.
He's the Adi Buddha, is that right? I think, yeah.
Yeah, you could say like that.
Right.
Say, any word that it kind of denotes primordial, what is that? It's kind of the essence of all of that
The tantric lineages often go back to him, don't they?
Sorry?
The tantric lineages often go back to him, don't they?
They do. Yeah, they go back to Vajradhara with a consort in that image. You can also see him more separate like that. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let me leave it here today. I know we didn't do the breakout groups, but I thought let me stop there because there's a lot of, this is the headier stuff that we get into, and I really want you, I'd love you for homework to obviously, continue some of the readings. If some people getting to some of the readings, there's some juicy stuff in the readings, and feel free to ask any questions there, but I'd love you to really, I want you to turn over these 4 reasons this week in your mind, in your heart. Find a way, get some simple Lam Rim book. And I want you to just focus on those 4 reasons in the Guru Devotion section. Make your highlights or make your little outline or your note. Can you sit 10, 20 minutes a day on it? Where there's times when you're going to just be sitting there and going, okay, so Vajradhara said the Guru is a Buddha. Okay, got it. But you really need to go to a deeper level of get the reasonings back there, where you glance at the reasonings for a moment so they're in the back of your head of what is it about Vajradhara that he said that? Why did he say that? And go through, like maybe look at that quote during the last 500-year period, because they usually have that quote in there. And then realize I'm going to manifest as a teacher. Well, look at these teachers we have now. Look at Lama Zopa Rinpoche has manifested. It is a degenerate time. Can I develop some faith and reverence towards this person? If that omniscient mind is there, they must have had this view that this was going to manifest like this one day. And the best thing we could do is find this teacher. And so slowly turn that over. Go to the representation. Can you see fully enlightened beings? Do you see Thousand-Armed Chenrezig? So our karma, we get to see His Holiness though. Think of that grace. That you have the karma to see His Holiness as a respected teacher. That's pretty extraordinary. To listen to one, he's live now. You can go to his schedule, and he was on last night. I think it was last night. So you can watch the recordings of it, and you can actually get these, and you can watch His Holiness teaching now from Dharamsala. It's fantastic. So there is an emissary for us. There's somebody. Lama Zopa Rinpoche has his videos. Watch a portion of those, but go into the real Lam Rim and turn it around in your mind on a deeper level. 15, 20 minutes a day, just try. See if you can go through those 4 points, okay? Try your best. I'm gonna do a dedication now from the COVID practices that Rinpoche has liked us to do some dedications. So I'm gonna share my screen and we can join in to dedicate. I'd also like to dedicate whatever merit we've created from our time together. I'd like to dedicate it to peace on the planet right now and an end to this terrible disease, COVID, or at least a lessening of all the diseases on the planet and all the war and hatred and racism and all the negative things. And of course, I would like to dedicate to more enlightened leadership in the United States as soon as possible, and maybe some miracle that the Supreme Court, who knows what will happen with that. And to all the beings who have died, who have died recently, may immediately take a precious human rebirth to benefit all. And for those who are ill, may they be healed instantly. Please feel free to join in. Can everybody see that? Great, I'm gonna make it bigger. May the precious Supreme Bodhicitta not yet born arise. May that arisen not decline, but increase more and more. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sicknesses. May all the sicknesses without exception of transmigratory beings never occur again. In all my lives never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma. By completing the qualities of the grounds and paths, may I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. By the force of the victorious one, Tsongkhapa, acting as our direct Mahayana virtuous friend in all our lives, may we never turn away for even a second from the pure path highly admired by the victorious ones. Like the earth, water, fire, and wind, medicines and monastery firewood may always be enjoyed by all sentient beings as they like and without resistance. May I cherish all sentient beings like my own life. May I cherish them much more than myself. May all their negative karma ripen on me. May all my virtue ripen on them. As long as any sentient being has not been liberated from samsara, may I abide in samsara to help them, even though I could achieve highest enlightenment. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, the numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty of existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty of existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sentient beings who are completely empty of existing from their own side to that state which is completely empty of existing from its own side, by myself alone, who am completely empty of existing from my own side. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train, just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue with the dedication praised as the best by all the gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. For Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the 3 sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. So next week, we're going to focus on the kindness of the Guru, how to devote in action, and what happens when things go wrong, and anything else we forgot. Thank you so much. Lovely to see all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.